We're here to talk about breaking down barriers and methods for collaboration, which is kind of ironic, I think, because we're in a group that's focused on wildfire practitioners, while at the same time in Sacramento right now is the Society of American Foresters National Conference. So it's a little unfortunate that it's the wildfire practitioners and the foresters in Sacramento. And I get it. I mean, I work for the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, and with all due respect, chiefs, sometimes there's not enough active collaboration between the forestry and natural resources side and the wildfire protection side. And in my opinion, there's not enough collaboration, active collaboration, although this is changing, which is really exciting, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, between the forestry side and natural resources side and wildfire prevention. But again, that's changing. So it's unfortunate, and because we need wildfire practitioners talking with foresters, we need state agencies talking to the federal agencies, we need the federal agency staff in California, or the folks in the national office talking to those in California. What are your priorities? We're not defining them for you. And we need states talking to other states. We need to be talking to Canada and Colorado and Washington. So again, we just need to encourage as much coordination and communication and information sharing as we can. But how? What are the best avenues for information exchange? Our panelists tonight are going to talk about that. We've got representatives from wildfire risk reduction, natural resource management, and science and policy. To get our efforts in communicating with our audiences make a difference, but collectively, they make an impact. So we want to continue to work collectively. How are we going to best address the growing needs and the growing demands from our stakeholders? The demands are increased with technology. We have more methods to information share because of technology, but we have a greater demand for that information sharing. Folks want data, they want information, they want it now. And there's a greater risk to everyone. You know, we've all discussed this. More people are losing their homes, more people are living with smoke. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan, Tony, and Ilkay, who are going to discuss the challenges that they faced and the methods and tools they're using for communication, information sharing, and collaboration. First, I'll turn it to Megan Fitzgerald McGowan.
All right, that's me on the screen. Hi everyone, my name is Megan Fitzgerald McGowan, and I work for the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA. Who's heard of NFPA? Yay! I used to not have heard of NFPA until I joined them, so you guys are already way ahead of where I was. And I am the National FireWise USA Program Manager. It's been wonderful today to hear people talking about FireWise USA. You're doing my job for me, but that right there is touching on collaboration. You know, the work that we do at NFPA is really dependent on all of those who work and contribute with us. And for those of you who don't know, just real quick, what is NFPA? We are a self-funded global nonprofit established in 1896. We've been around quite some time, devoted to eliminating death, injury, property, and economic loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazards. And we're known for our codes and standards that are developed by technical committees of subject matter experts such as you. It's not NFPA telling you what to do, it's we bring all of you in, and then you help us tell the rest of the people what to do. Public education, outreach and advocacy, training and certification. Our wildfire division was formed in the 1980s and has been doing work in the built environment space since that time. And that's really when we look at wildfire, our purpose is around those homes and communities and what people can do to be safer. And our flagship program is FireWise USA. So FireWise USA is all about kind of that framework, how communities can get organized. We currently have 2,300 recognized sites across the country. 740 of those are in California. And I could break those numbers down even more, but you guys lead the counties and all of that. It's great work, but really it's about people, residents being a part of that process and understanding that, hey, I live in an area where wildfires burn, and I need to be active in the solution to the wildfire problem. It can't just be government coming in and telling people what to do, but it's really everyone coming together. So residents, local government, local organizations, working with state and federal agencies. As an organization, NFPA works across the federal level and the state level and the local level to help address policy concerns, codes and standards, training and certification, all those things. We don't need to dive too much into why Firewise, but just in case you wonder, it's really individuals have a responsibility to do stuff on their property, and hey, my property influences your property and vice versa, let's work together. And wildfires are going to be a part of the ecosystem. I don't want to talk too much because I can go on and on about this, and we'll be here later to talk more. But what does all this mean when we look at like tools for collaboration? So the program's been around for 20 years. It's not a new program, it's rather an old program. And we are trying to figure out how do we take this old program and keep it innovative, keep it engaging, keep targeting those residents who it's getting harder and harder to connect to. That was brought up earlier, right? How do you engage that person who has 5 other things on their mind at the same time around, I have to get kids or family members here. How am I gonna pay for this other thing I have to do? And now you're telling me I need to think about wildfire and improving my home. And are we talking to them in a way that they're receiving the message, right? It's about sending and receiving messages. And who in here came into this workforce to be a social scientist on a daily basis? How many of those, you did, woohoo! But how many of us are really working within social science on a daily basis? And I think a lot of people, foresters wanted to talk to the trees, or you want to go put the fire out. That's my background, I was a firefighter. And then I finally was like, why am I here when these people aren't helping us be safe? What can I do to be more proactive? But how do we get that message across? And every audience within a community is going to be different. And when I say community, it's loosely defined. It could be a city or a town, or it could be that HOA, or it could even be that southwestern section of that HOA that feels very differently about things than that northwestern section of the HOA, right? You have to identify who is your audience, what do they value, and how do you talk to them? And at NFPA, because we do work across the country and really globally, we are trying to pull together resources to help with that. So we have our Educational Messages Advisory Committee, Desk Reference, EMAC, and it's really this thing pulled together by subject matter experts to bring home core messages around fire and life safety. And there's a whole chapter on wildfire, but these core messages are based in science, and using them helps provide consistency across audiences, but then you tailor it to connect to what they value, so they will actually take something away from your conversation and make it actionable versus, they're talking about doing this stuff around my home and all of this, but I really, I'm focused on water in my area. And why, a good example, and then I'll finish, is when I was in Colorado at a conference, and they're talking about to the city of Denver, why should people living in the city of Denver care about wildfire mitigation up in the mountains? Well, that's their watershed. So you talk to them about water. Maybe they don't care about fire, but they care about having water. So you have to find those values, find that message to get across, so then you can get them to buy in to the work that you're doing. So this tool, because we're talking about tools, is a tool that we provide that can be used to help science-based messaging, taking it from core and then customizing it. Just some quick points, but I know it's someone else's turn to talk, so I'm gonna skip on over. We can talk more about Firewise later.
Oh, wow. So I was told that no one wanted to see slides at 5 o'clock before the reception, and so you guys get to stare at this while I read off my notes here. My name's Tony Anderson. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Communications at the California Natural Resources Agency. And I've really enjoyed working with this panel because we had a blank canvas for this conference, and around the framework of breaking down barriers and collaboration. And so we had some really good conversations about what that meant, right? And it means something different for each one of us sitting up here based on what we do for a living and our daily jobs and our daily roles. So we'll bring these very different perspectives. So as I was thinking through it, I'm thinking through it from a comms lens. I was most recently the Deputy Director for Strategic Communications at CAL FIRE, and just big kudos to CAL FIRE for investing in strategic communications and starting to think about making these connections and the storytelling approach. All that to say, as I'm thinking through this, it's thinking through where we've been in terms of wildfire communications and outreach, where we're at, and where we're going. And I'm constantly thinking about where we're going in the future. The old way, right? We all know the old way. You have your incident communications. It's a checklist. You run through that checklist. You move on to the next incident. Well, we live in a much more dynamic world now, where talking points in a press release are yesterday's news. And a lot of times, it doesn't even get engagement. Folks are checked out. There's so much noise. We live in a 24/7 news cycle. And so where does that leave us? How do we, if we're thinking about breaking down barriers and increasing collaboration, how do we connect with more people? And how do we do that better in new ways that actually resonate? And so what is that new way? I don't think there's any type of silver bullet. There's no one answer. As Megan mentioned, every audience is different. But I think about it in terms of where we are going in wildfire and natural resources communications is super dynamic. I mean, we are living in one of the most exciting times for communications in the natural resources and wildfire space. For a couple of reasons. One, we have a toolbox available to us, and it's how people consume information. You can call it a strategic communication toolbox, you can call it an outreach toolbox, you can call it a community toolbox. But the key point of the idea of this toolbox as we look forward is thinking about communications in new ways. That it's not just about blasting information, it's about using communications for an outcome and to change behaviors and to help, at least connect emotionally with our audiences. And those tools are just part of the equation. Whether it be a podcast or an e-newsletter, we've had a lot of success, whether you use Constant Contact or MailChimp or Gov Delivery. The tools are just a way to get from point A to point B. But really, the heart of where we're going in wildfire and natural resource communications is starting to think about what we're telling as a story, connecting with people, thinking about what those people's stories are, and how we can really connect to that in a deeper way than just telling. So I call it going beyond public information. And it's not a nice to have anymore. It's a must have if we're going to break through the noise and actually make a difference. When we're working through this, I also, I was challenged a little bit. Okay, Tony, that's great. These concepts, right? We know we've been somewhere. We know we have to evolve in this dynamic day and age. What's a specific example? And I go back to an experience I had helping to lead Oregon's wildfire recovery process after Oregon's 2020 wildfires. And we were in a very unique place where Oregon did not have the infrastructure for any kind of wildfire recovery operation. We stood up 1,200 people, 36 contracts, an entire, operations center in a matter of a month and a half. And that was in 10 different fire corridors throughout the state of Oregon. The initial emergency response was somewhat straightforward, right? We are pointing people to resources. We are providing a timeline. We're getting funding in place. And we just kept hitting that, the constant drumbeat, letting communities know where to turn. And we're doing it through all the different channels, right? A lot of folks, a mailer isn't going to work. A lot of folks at that point didn't have phones. So email and digital communication isn't going to work. So we're thinking through other creative ways of, flyers in community stores. But at the end of the day, folks started asking us, can you help us see hope in our community, in other communities throughout the state? So we started embedding the public information pieces into people's stories and to help tell hope. And some of the feedback I got after that operation was, some of the most impactful I've had in my communications career. So I would just challenge everyone in this room that we'll have an opportunity to tell this story, and I think we have an opportunity now to sort of go beyond public information and to sort of change the paradigm of the quote-unquote stereotypical stodgy wildfire natural resource communications. So I'd go.
Hi everyone, I'm Ilka Eldentush. I'm a professor of data science and trained in computer science at UC San Diego. And my background is in scalable computing and process management. And as we scale computing and these processes and automate, there is message passing between even each steps of this process or things that we are trying to scale. I think human communication and collaboration is a lot like that. When we work on things, if we do some things right, and if we build processes and messaging in a scalable way, I think we can collaborate effectively. And there are some tools that we could all build. There are some entities that we can all build. And a part of my research also relates to wildland fire, which is why I'm here. A number of us had this problem of scaling our research and how can we collaborate more effectively, how can we build the right systems in place so we can bring science and technology innovations into the policy and solutions space a lot faster. And CWI, Climate and Wildfire Institute, was something a group of us, mostly professors and policymakers in the wildland fire space, but also entrepreneurs and others, got together as a boundary organization. So CWI right now have been operational for the last couple of years, and the projects that you can see relate to wildland landscape management, data, stewardship, intentional fire, and many other projects that bridge the science and technology community to more the solution and policy space. And this is one way of course, scaling. The other is data and AI. I get asked often, how can we build on data and AI as a communication platform? And one of my labs is the wildfire lab, which builds science-driven technologies with the fire management community. So I would like to grab your attention to fire management community. So we are not talking about science and working with the scientists, but taking our requirements from the use-inspired gaps within those collaborations, just like partnering with the Climate and Wildfire Institute and other agencies to identify potential gaps and figuring out ways to create use-inspired platforms that build on data, technology, and AI, so that we can find ways to create sustainable and scalable solutions to first, of course, collaborate to find those gaps, then incubate within the science and technology space, then graduate them into more sustainable platforms through partnership models. So this model have been tried and tested in a lot of different settings. One of them is the initial attack fire response program called FireMap. That's being used by a number of organizations. We do prescribed fire optimization platforms and fire weather visualization together with utilities, so they're able to collaborate with the latest high-resolution fire data in their jurisdictions and beyond. And also something I'll talk about more today, this immersive forest 3D exploration environment. And this all is based on a data and modeling commons that is open science, open data oriented, but can also have a governance associated to it. One of these projects, the immersive forest, builds on, we learned a lot in this process. Every fire season is different, and every community is different that we are trying to collaborate with. So as we sense the environment, let's say through LiDAR type of sensing, can we create a space that we actually bring context to information and use AI, what this AI could be? This is actually a LiDAR depiction of a 3D forest. And here the avatar is a fire professional, but it could be the public, it could be a teacher, it could be a training setting. And what you're seeing on the top right is an AI that goes through the same LiDAR data and identifies 1, 10, 100,000 hour fields. So by adding what's learned from that AI into the immersive space, we are actually bringing more context and understanding to that data. And AI can be used in this context that as more people build these AIs and add more value to the information before, after prescribed fire, for instance, implementations, we can now go in there and talk to the forest. We can ask questions and communicate with the forest based on what the forest is. Another thing that we've done to carry this concept a little further is to ask the students then, if you had access to models and data, what would you do? And this next generation keeps amazing us, of course, but everything from creating these virtual spaces that you could walk through wildfire and prescribe fire and see their effects, to explaining what a burn boss does, to a board game that, if you're doing some things right, if a fire happens, just like Monopoly, you don't lose your communities. But, these are, if you don't, then you lose your community. So to explain fire behavior in different ways. So Flint, for instance, is that animated short, is about a dog that could actually spark a fire, and if it's controlled, it sort of benefits the environment. So I think these are the important things about data and AI, that we need to build context that we can actually remove barriers of understanding and bring more justice to our solutions and equity to our solutions through such approaches. And as we were talking about what we can discuss in this panel, I think equity and open access to information and situational awareness is something that we need to keep in mind. And of course, with data and AI comes a lot of responsibility and challenges, so we need to also keep those in mind. Thank you. I think we have Kristen next.
So in my role with CAL FIRE in climate and energy, I also serve as a program manager for the California Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force. And I thought the example of the task force was super fitting when we're talking about how we can break down barriers and how we can share resources for collaboration. I don't know how to advance the slides. This one? Okay. Oh, the big button. The task force is taking a holistic and very integrative approach to the wildfire crisis. Some of the tools that we're using, or the methods that we're using, is alignment of joint strategies, coordinated communication, and collective reporting. The investment in the capacity of our implementation partners so that they can plan more, do more, and implement more. And the coordination of resources, funding, behind large landscape scale multi-benefit projects. Alignment. For the first time ever, state, federal, local, and tribal partners are working together with the goal of landscape health and community resilience in mind. A resilient representative from each one of these sectors is represented on the task force executive committee, and we've got some of the best scientists advising our efforts. Approximately 13 work groups are unifying their voices on what needs to be done in different strategies and different joint strategies. And we're not just talking about forest health and wildfire resilience, we're talking about prescribed fire and workforce and wood products and business development and recreation, everything that touches on the issues that we're working on. And as mentioned, we're doing our best to help align our communications, with the task force being the unified voice for progress being made on the ground. I hope you will visit our website at wildfiretaskforce.org, sign up to get our communications, and share with us what you're doing so that we can share with our partners and our stakeholders what you're doing. I need to go back. And let's talk about breaking down barriers. As we're unifying our reporting. So for the first time ever, we now have a complete inventory of all the fuels treatments in the state, completed by various different partners, the states, feds, nonprofits, private industrial, and on all land ownerships. I have included a little box there that you can share your phone QR code. I can never remember that name. Use a QR code to go look at this dashboard, interagency dashboard. We hope you'll use it. We hope you'll try it out. And we hope you'll give us feedback. Capacity. In order to be successful, no doubt we need an all-hands-on-deck approach. And that means contributing to the capacity of organizations large and small to be able to do the work and to coordinate on planning and implementation. Key to this is support and guidance from Department of Conservation's Regional and Forest Capacity Program. The task force is also bringing some of the best science to these planning efforts in the forms of regional profiles and regional resource kits. Again, a QR code will lead you to that site. And what a better place to collaborate than a hub. All these tools will be, I think Ilkay touched on the data hub a little bit. All these tools will be concentrated in a central repository called the Forest Data Hub. Finally, we're bringing resources to the table. The coordination of our regional partners is providing a structure so that federal, state, and private entities can coordinate their efforts to fund landscape-scale multi-benefit projects. And this is the exciting thing, I think, for me at CAL FIRE, is that for the first time that, in my experience, the Forest Health Program is working with the Wildfire Prevention Program to fund a landscape pilot in Southern California. In 2024, the task force will turn its efforts to an action plan update. We'll be creating a course for the next 5 years. So follow us, convene with us at our meetings. We're coming back to Southern California in April. And now, speaking of turning our focus to the future, I wanted to ask some questions of our panelists regarding the future, the way that they view their future, not their future, but our future, our collaborative and connected future. What are you gonna do when you grow up? All right. I'll stay here. So, Ilkay, my experience in state service is that the progress of our state and federal agencies is burdened by outdated technology and a little bit of a resistance to change. How does CWI help to overcome those institutional limitations and lags?
CWI is a boundary organization, so it's set up to create actually a collaborative environment through convenings and through carefully constructed projects, through a consortium model to engage agencies, scientists, and everyone who is contributing to these solutions in a space where we can actually be a little more agile beyond the institutional boundaries. One of the examples of this is this intentional fire and stewardship project that brings together many professionals working in this area, and it creates an exchange environment that none of us otherwise would have access to. So through this, first of all, technology and science is great, but human connection and human thought and human collaboration is needed for any of those to be adopted. And if we actually co-design solutions, we can create the methods and frameworks to apply those solutions in the practical space in careful ways, together with its control and governance. So CWI has created some models, and more are coming in this space. And a number of us working in different parts of this continuum. You know, there's a huge continuum from the human to the technology. And within that, there's also a lot of, as I mentioned, gaps that need to be identified. But without talking, collaborating, and really creating that foundation of trust, it's really hard to come to those solutions. I think something like CWI is a platform in this space to bring all of us around a collaborative path.
Next question. Tony, after hearing about this emerging technology and AI, how do you think, or how do you see the Resources Agency, California Natural Resources Agency, implementing this emerging technology to facilitate information sharing among the departments under your umbrella and then out to your stakeholders?
That's a great question. Well, first, I think we need to give CAL FIRE a big plug for being named in Time Magazine today one of the 200 best inventions. Their AI partnership with Alert California being named one of the 200 best inventions for 2023. I think that's a huge deal. That happened today. Deserves a round of applause. Well, first, I'll be the first one to say, like, I just stood up at that podium, right, and I talked about the future of comms, right? But I'll be the first to admit that AI kind of scares the heck out of me sometimes. ChatGPT scares the heck out of me because as a copywriter, as a writer, you're looking at the potential for you to become irrelevant in the future. But there's a ton of opportunity there in terms of what AI can do with the right people behind the wheel. I think some friends and I were having a conversation, some marketing friends 4 or 5 years ago, and we were talking about, okay, what is AI going to do? Like from a marketing and communication standpoint, what can we use it for? And at that time, the thinking is that AI would be sort of a segmenting tool. It would, kind of like what Google Ads was doing 5, 6 years ago, it would track internet behavior and your browsing behavior, and then it would tailor the information that came to you, not just in terms of ads or browsing activity, but in your email and your social media browsing. So it was this thinking that AI could personalize the internet for you. And we're like, okay, well, it's a bit big brotherish, but that's cool. There's opportunity there. What we didn't see coming was what AI now makes possible in the communication space, and it gives small teams with very little budget the opportunity to design, to write, to create, to organize. It's a personal assistant, if you will, especially for communications and marketing pros. So more specifically to your question, Kristen, I think it gives us the opportunity when used responsibly and ethically to reach more audiences, to connect with underserved communities. It gives us the tools to sort of even the communications playing field. And at the end of the day, heck, it lets us have some fun. I mean, if you've seen some of those images that AI can create on demand, I mean, we can have some fun with that, while at the same time using it to inform. That obviously being the core of all of our jobs. So I think there's a ton of opportunity there. It's something that we're exploring at Natural Resources Agency, both for how individual departments are using it and leading it, with CAL FIRE leading the way, but also how we partner with individual departments and how we use that as a resource to continue to increase and improve and further communications. So it's exciting.
Thanks. So we've talked about immersive technology, but Megan, you have talked to people around the nation about different modes of communication and what messages work best for them. Can you talk a little bit about how to keep pace with some of the needs of diverse audiences, even those who don't have access to that technology?
Yes, I'll try to touch on it correctly. It is nearing the end of the day, and I'm nearing the end of my mental capacity for understanding and speaking. But you know, when we look at the different states that we engage with across the country to facilitate Firewise USA, and the different types of communities that we're trying to get to take action, at the end of the day, collaboration and breaking down barriers still comes down to the human connection. So it's a mix of using technology, high-touch things where you can get initial messaging out, but for that real action and behavior change on the ground, you have to go talk to people. You have to be with them in their community. You have to go see what it is they're trying to address and hear their concerns and be open-minded. The key to any collaboration across organizations that are practitioners and then communicating down is you got to take off the ego. You are not in charge. You're all on an equal playing field, and you have to be humble in your communication. 2 weeks ago, I had the chance to go do a tour of the Southeast with 5 of our other state Firewise liaisons. We had North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia. And a part of the country I've never been to. I've never fought fire there. And looking at their fire problem and learning from them, like, I kept bringing up the word building codes, and they were like, you need to stop that. That is a bad word here. And to me, that's an important part of what we do, and it's one of the important parts of the solution, not the only one, but it has a role to play. So with anything in collaboration and going out there, you have to listen, and then you have to, like, I did listen. I didn't just keep pounding building codes. I said, okay, I get it. So how can you make that something more palatable in a way that they will connect to? So totally on board with all of these new technologies that allow us to collaborate better. Like, I can now attend all the state meetings across the country because of Zoom, right? That's a post-pandemic thing that makes me more accessible, and that's great. But still, then in person, we get into deeper connection. So I'm all for a mix of the two as we try to continue moving forward to see action happen on the ground.
I wanted to make time for the audience. Any questions from the audience? Like, heck no, let's get it to the reception. Do you have any questions for each other?
I have an addition to some of the things we said about AI. In communication, I think the rule is you're not responsible from what you say, you're responsible from what they hear. And AI actually could be an opportunity for us to bring context to information so we can tailor the message to communities in a scalable way. So when I show the immersive forest, I didn't have time to go over a lot of things. But one of the things is for each pixel in that forest, there's some knowledge built into it. What kind of field this is, when it was last burned, is it before or after fire, and many other things. And you can keep adding that knowledge into it. But without mapping that to who is walking through this forest, we can have the avatar to be a burn bus, a policymaker, a public person, or a trainee in a particular settings. So if we don't make the effort to actually tailor the message to the right person, in any communication setting, we'll be failing. And that should also comes with some rules of what needs to be shared with this person at what time, before, during, after fire. And these are, I think, things that we can carefully identify and think through in all parts of emergency management, from preparedness to mitigation to response and recovery, and really create accessible messages through experience, data, AI for human beings. At the end of the day, collaboration and communication, the biggest ingredient to it is the human, especially in a setting as sensitive as wildland fire.
I would 100% echo that. And I was just thinking through the audience snapshot and thinking about what AI can make possible for understanding our different audiences, and then using that just like we would polls, right? Like polls accelerated 1,000 times, more than 1,000 times, to help us understand our audiences, because I think we get caught in the trap, the anecdotal trap of going, well, this particular audience is just this, ubiquitous thing. They think this, they're going to respond like this. AI gives us these insights that will help us tailor that information and really help us, get it right faster without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars too. So that's a great point.
I love that. All right, well, we'll wrap it up and get you out of here. But I wanted to thank my panelists. It was fantastic working with you. I want to thank the conveners of this conference. And I just want to acknowledge that we're in the Presidential Library, Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. And he was a president who called to tear down this wall. And so just thinking about our messages tonight and how we're trying to tear down those silos that we work within and to encourage the flow of ideas and resources across all sectors so that we can work together to address this wildfire crisis. We've talked about using technology, but then remembering that we have to tailor our messages, that it's the human connection, and that we have to sometimes try to walk in other people's pixelated different shoes, right? So I hope you enjoy your time today. And when you go to the reception that we're keeping you from, I hope you will take time to talk to somebody that you wouldn't normally talk to and listen to their stories. Thank you.